Before we're ordained, Episcopal priests have to take a set of tests called the General Ordination Exam. And years ago, test takers were told to prepare for one notorious question. When is the feast of Christ the King? Answers? Today. What else does it say? Last Sunday after Pentecost. First Sunday, or last Sunday before Advent. Those are all answers I probably would have put, and they'd all be wrong.
Because there is no Christ.
Because it was a cruel trick question for tired seminarians. The right answer was, there is no such feast day on the Episcopal Church calendar. I know. That is technically still true. The official and oh so memorable name for this, the last Sunday of the church year, is the last Sunday after Pentecost. You will find no mention of Christ the King in the Book of Common Prayer or any other Episcopal Church supplemental books of commemorations or feast days. And yet, the words Christ the King appear in most published online and paper Episcopal Church calendars that you can find and buy, complete with instruction for our stoles to be white. Now, to be clear, there is no rubric or restriction against celebrating the day the way we do. But in practice across the church, it feels like it's actually required. So, without being particularly encouraged to do so, we not only picked up this Roman Catholic created observance of Christ the King, but we ran with it. And I should say, it's not just us, it's not just Episcopalians. Many of our Protestant denominational friends have done this as well. As Bishop Neil Alexander has written, Christ the King is now, by force of liturgical evolution, a major Sunday celebration in the Episcopal Church. And so, if not an official feast day like All Saints, for example, Christ the King may just be our only popular feast, in place entirely because of the practice and will of the people. Even with the tension of an exclusively gendered image of God as King, some call this Realm of God Sunday instead. Even with the problem of celebrating a title that Jesus of Nazareth does not accept, something in us, collectively, if not uniformly, demands the feast of Christ the King, wants to bring out our finest white and gold vestments and altar hangings, wants to declare on this day that Christ is King. This happens to be the 100th anniversary of Christ the King Sunday. It was established by Pope Pius XI in 1925, an era we seem to have in many ways circled back around to today. Those living in 1925 were still soaked in memories of a devastating pandemic a little over 5 years earlier. They were experiencing accelerated cultural, technological, and economic change with an increasingly visible chasm of disparity between the richest and the poorest. The most entrenched, familiar, if deeply imperfect institutions were crumbling. And a Amidst the fear and uncertainty that all of this caused, the people watched a chilling, steady rise of authoritarian movements, backed by violent white supremacist ideology. 100 years ago, the world was experiencing an era of uncertainty and disorientation. An era of strongmen and bullies ready to take advantage of that experience. An era of anxiety. And amidst that anxiety, Pope Pius, a complicated man we now know was in full cooperation with the authoritarian government of his day, gives to the church Christ the King Sunday. At the end of his life, Pius became deeply distressed, as it was clear that anti-Semitism and racism, both of which he considered incompatible with the gospel, were part and parcel of these rising fascist movements. He died before his reported plan to push against Mussolini and his allies could be realized. And yet, while he did not live to see it, his invention of Christ the King Sunday, for many of us, has become a day to push against those influences. A day to bow before God as the only true authority. Something that feels more and more to me these days like a glorious and faithful act of resistance. We have no king here, but the unspeakably vulnerable figure we encounter in Luke's gospel this morning, hanging from a cross. Perhaps the feast of Christ the King could as easily be called the Feast of No Kings. And maybe this observance has taken such deep root in our collective imaginations and practices because it gives us a chance, particularly in eras of anxiety, to stand at the foot of that cross and to take a moment and remember that while we must know them and operate within them, we do not belong to the powers of this world. We do not belong to the control-seeking strong men of the 1st or the 20th or the 21st centuries. We belong to a God of love who was executed by the state and is always found as and with the most vulnerable, is found with the immigrant fleeing from ICE, the Palestinian child healing from war wounds, the trans parent seeking safety and dignity, the Black mother denied basic maternal care. Christ is the one we crown, and these are the people he declares blessed. So I think this popular feast today that demands to be celebrated offers us an opportunity to renew our commitment to this king who rejects kingship. An opportunity to get ready for next week when we start all over again in the season of Advent, watching and waiting with hope and joy for the world to change, and it will change because Christ is